All right, we're back. We're back. Of course, there's quite a bit of interest in psychedelics and psychedelic culture in this space. But we like to offer all kinds of perspectives on the matter. We think that's how it expands. And of course, when there's a lot of hype around something and when Netflix starts making series about your content, be worried. So we want to offer all kinds of perspectives on this matter. And there's two people who will be showcasing, I think, very particularly warm views where community fits in the psychedelic process. Please welcome Roz Watts and Leonie Schneider.
Thank you. Wow. Good evening, Boom family and friends. I thought with that delay I got my nerves under control, but I think I was misled. My name is Leonie Schneider, and I'm delighted to be here with you this evening to share a bit more about what the importance of psychedelic community is in the healing process. I can't even begin to express how honored I feel, and a big thanks to Ivan and Chiara and the incredible Liminal Village team for inviting me along, because you've had some incredible talks from this podium from a lot of experts, and I am not one of them. I can't lay claim to knowing any of the answers, let alone all of the answers. So what I'm going to do tonight is just share with you a bit about my experience and my journey of psychedelic healing and how profound the integration process has been in that part of it. Louder, louder, louder? Can we have it louder? I will then invite Dr. Roz Watts up onto the podium to share a bit about the integration community that I've been part of for the last year. And she'll explain a bit to us about what it is, what it aims to be, and we'll then both stay on for a few questions with whatever time we have remaining, and we'll be available on the end, to my right, to your left, for any other questions if anyone wants to hang around. So, I'll start us off with a question. How did we all get here collectively, and how did I get here personally? A lot of optimists are keen on telling us that it's never been a better time to be alive. People are living longer, apparently fewer people are dying in war, there's less abject poverty, and yet I would argue that for so many people, we're psychologically more challenged, and there's so much pressure, more than there's ever been, and there's a lot of spiritual impoverishment. We have been challenged, and modern life has provided us with things that we are struggling to overcome. Capitalism, mass media, the rise of individualism. But deep down in our bones, I think, deep down in the essence of who we are, we know that we're not meant to be living like this. We're not meant to be adapting to this rapid change of pace that we all kind of miss. And I look at this, and it's beautiful, that sense of community, that communal living. Instead, we're subjected to abject individualism and isolation. So I'll kick us off now with a bit of my story of isolation, really. For me, isolation and disconnection has started from a very young age. My name, as I mentioned, is Leonie Schneider. The next thing people say is, you don't look German. You're from London, but you don't sound British. What are you? And then I'll explain, I am a Greek South African living in London, married to a German, and speaking to people in Portugal. That's who I am. And it's a real summary of where I've been. For much of my life, I've been traveling emotional landscapes, physical landscapes, to try come home to myself, and find some kind of sense of belonging or purposefulness or rootedness. I was born to an immigrant family in a country that I'm sure you all know was fractured by racial injustice and violence. I've experienced a lot of violence, both within the home and within my community and the country at large. And during that time, I had no support to help process those experiences. The only coping mechanism I had was to dissociate myself from the pain and the fear, just shut down and get through it. But that's not a really good coping mechanism. Eventually, the things I was trying to avoid all come back up, and I was prescribed antidepressants for the first time in 1998. On medical advice, I stayed on them for 22 years, which is pretty much all my adult life. In some respects, antidepressants are life-saving. They can save you or dampen down or save you from the depths of despair, but they also kind of cut off your experiences of deep joy and connectedness. So in 2019, I saw mention of a clinical trial that was running at Imperial College in London. So I thought, well, there's a good idea. I'm going to try something different. And I signed up for the trial, came off my antidepressants for the first time, and participated in their second trial for psilocybin for depression. What the trial did for me was crack me open, come into contact with the pain, accept the pain, and start me on a long healing process. My concern about the medicalization of psilocybin is that people are trying to replace one medicine with another, and they're selling psychedelics or psilocybin as a silver bullet. I realized during that process that I had patterns to unlearn, traumas to heal, new ways of being, and that I had to remember love. I was undoing years of ancestral trauma and really coming home to myself. I've now been medication-free for almost 3 years, which is an achievement after 22 years. It's been a wild ride. There are a lot of emotions that you come into contact with, and it's been incredibly rich and varied. The constraints of the trial meant that I had very little support, and then the trial ends, and nowhere to go with these experiences or a community to support me with this. Thankfully, at the end of, during lockdown, Dr. Roz Watts started an online integration community, which I joined. And for me, that was, while it's not a therapeutic container, what I really needed was a space where I could just show up and be myself and feel that sense of belonging to a place or a people that I hadn't had up to that point. The ASA integration program consists of a 12-month period, the 12 trees. And there's one for every month of the year. And each tree has some incredible lessons and imagery. And what's amazing about the tree imagery is that it really gives you that sense of rootedness. I'm back to that rootedness idea, and real strength and solidity. The way the program was structured is that once a month we would do a tree journey online, which is kind of a guided imagery meditation, where you're invited to merge with the tree and the lessons that it holds for you. And I'm super excited for all of you here that Roz will lead us in a tree meditation for the apple tree, which is the tree for this time of the year. We also had a mid-month facilitation sharing circle, where we reflected on what did we get from that tree, and what are the small steps and little seeds of change that we could go forward with. And from those small seeds and those small steps, big changes have come. In my life personally, and for many of the people that have been through the program. I think what's interesting for me is that we often talk about surrendering into the psychedelic experience, but people think it's a very passive process. I think, if you use psychedelics for healing, there's something really quite active about what do you do with that insight, what steps do you take, what changes do you take going forward. I'll end off with four takeaways I had from the program. The first is my acceptance of myself and others. Meeting with an integration community has been really powerful because you have a group of people you meet with regularly, and you don't feel you have to be a certain way or do a certain thing. You can be whatever tree you are. You can have gnarly roots and wonky branches. You can be bare because your leaves have dropped. It's all imagery that you work through in the program. But you can just be yourself as you are in that moment. Secondly, and this was quite major for me, I see the inevitable downturns that people have low periods. It's not wrong, it's not a defect. It's realizing that's just part of the human experience. So now I think I'm more gentle with myself. When I feel down, I realize, okay, this is the winter of the year. This is my wintering period, and that spring will come again. That the sun will come, and it's just about nourishing yourself, turning inwards, and getting through that period. And thirdly, the thing I found most interesting about completing this cycle of 12 trees, you then start the process again. And part of me thought, well, I've done that now. What more is there to learn? But there's something about going through a cycle and returning to the place you began and seeing things as if for the first time, new lessons, a deepening of the lessons, and really realizing that healing is not a linear line, it's a spiral and an ever-deepening process. And finally, the ultimate gift for me has been going through this process. I'm now going to continue with the program as a sharing circle facilitator. So having gone through it and really got richness from it, I now have an opportunity to give back to the community and be part of something that feels bigger than myself and purposeful. And so I think this is probably a good point to introduce you to Roz, who will tell you a bit more about that and do a meditation with us. Thank you.
Woo-woo! Oh, that was very loud. Thank you so much, Leonie. It always makes me very, very emotional when I hear Leonie speak. It's a very profound gift to me, actually. I feel a bit emotional. So Leonie was, as she said, Leonie was part of the second of 2 psilocybin for depression trials that we ran at Imperial College in London. And over the course of working on those 2 trials, I really saw how psychedelic therapy so often gives people these incredible insights. Leonie, as she mentioned, this insight about coming home to herself and realizing that at home she was love. And what a life-changing insight to have. But for these life-changing insights to actually change our lives, they have to be nurtured. I think these insights that many of us who experience psychedelics or psychedelic therapy, I think these insights are real gifts. I think they're the seeds of change. But if you plant a seed in over-extracted, depleted, cracked soil, it will not grow. If you put a seed in that kind of soil, the little green shoot comes up and it searches for light, and the little root goes down and it searches for water. And if it finds no light and finds no water, it withers. And I saw this over and over again in the psilocybin for depression research. In the session itself, the actual psilocybin session, we talked about how a psilocybin session is like a deep sea dive. You dive down into the deep waters of yourself and you search through the bottom of the ocean, through the silt, through the rocky shells. You prise open those shells, those places you don't want to go, and sometimes you find a pearl, and that pearl is an insight. And when you have it and you feel it, it's like you swim up to the surface and you hold that pearl in your hand, and then you plant it. You plant that pearl like it's a seed. You plant it so that it changes your life. But I saw over and over again that amazing pearl seed, that we should call it, it was so often about the same thing. It's about love, it's about connection, about belonging, about coming home to ourselves, like Leonie's insight. But the heartbreaking sense that these beautiful gifts were withering. And I saw so often with people in the integration session after the psilocybin deep dive, this shine on people's faces, this glow, this kind of golden sheen of having worked through trauma and found these pearls. But then 6 months later, often, that shine had gone because these seeds were withering in the toxic environment of our disconnected societies, as Leonie said. So the spiritual impoverishment, the extractivism, isolation, the injustice everywhere, the violence. It's a pretty polarized, exhausted, disempowered, and numb daily life for many people. And so for many people in the trial, their depression came back. And it's not surprising, really, because it is, as that famous quote says, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. So people got depressed again, and it was almost harder for them sometimes because they'd tasted something else, they'd tasted something deeper. So when the depression came back, it was almost worse than it was before. I've now left clinical research. Mostly I do some work in it still, but what I'm trying to do now, as Leonie mentioned, is to focus on creating or co-creating a patch of soil that is fertile and rich and nourishing for those seeds, those pearls of insights to grow in, to flourish in, turn into trees that can then cross-pollinate each other. And I did this really because I guess as well as being kind of frustrated by, the world, it's very easy to be frustrated by the world, I was also quite frustrated by my little patch of it, this psychedelic science. There's some amazing progress, but as Leonie said, the medicalization means that, there are some parts of it that are quite, kind of, I guess, disappointing, challenging. We need other ways too. It's not the only way. It's becoming quite kind of corporate. And I was also seeing as well a lot of appropriation. So people having this hunger, this deep hunger we feel for something deeper than the culture that many of us have grown up in the Western world, and our parents have grown up in, this deep longing for something deeper, because we've been so severed from our ancestors and severed from that indigenous wisdom. So many of us, we go to Peru or go somewhere and we come back and we kind of wear the feathers, and sometimes when you see someone with a Native American headdress on at a festival, you kind of want to say what is that, but you can't judge it, because you can see that it's this deep longing, and we don't know that by doing that we're kind of it's kind of complicity with the forces that actually eradicated indigenous populations. It's a hard thing to hold, and so seeing that made me realize that actually I needed to connect to my own indigenous medicine using culture, which I guess in the West is Druidry, in Europe is Druidry and Celtic story, Celtic heritage. So I was seeing the field of psychedelics overall and feeling this longing for something else and feeling quite sad about it and feeling quite kind of judgmental. And I kept thinking about that Rumi poem that says, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there, where when the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. And I loved that line, and I kept thinking, don't be so judgmental, just go and lie down in the grass, come on, just let go. But when the grass is withered around you, it's very, very difficult to lie down in the grass. And it's difficult, as Leonie said, to surrender. The idea of psychedelics, and you must just surrender, let it flow, let it unfold. But actually, when the grass is withering around us, do we need to just surrender, or do we need to start to resist and stand up? So I decided to start focusing on the little patch of ground that I really cared about and what I was angry about. And what I was angry about actually was what I'd seen, which was over and over again, participants taking part in trials, the courage and the bravery that takes, taking part, giving of themselves to this completely unknown method that's completely new and foreign in our culture, giving themselves over to it, having an ego death, these huge experiences, and then being left really without any community, any aftercare. We don't have the infrastructure in our society. Like in tribes in Peru, they have the infrastructure. It's part of their culture. It's not for us. And so many people in the trials were taking part, seeing these insights, feeling something, and then the sense of withering and loss. And sometimes, it's quite frightening for people too. And what was even more frustrating for me was reading the headlines in the papers about, psychedelics, going to rewire your brain, reset your brain, and that's a very helpful narrative for the corporate agenda that wants to sell these as medications that they can charge a lot of money for. But it felt so unjust and unfair to see these narratives about how one psilocybin session is going to reset your brain, and all these participants I was working with long term, and I could see very definitely that their brains had not been reset. It just hadn't happened that way. There was an amazing opening, but the brain had not been just reset like a magic cure. So I cared about that, and I also really cared about this idea of finding some indigenous wisdom from my own land. So I kind of knew that what my patch of soil was going to be something around forming community and having these something about connection to indigenous wisdom as part of that little patch of ground. So I started working on the trees. I started connecting to the wisdom of trees, a little bit about Druidry, and developed this idea of the 12 trees, one tree for every month, based on the Celtic tree calendar, where, as Leonie said, we go around the trees together in a kind of spiral. And we have a tree journey every month, and we are going to invite anyone that would like to take part in the tree journey for this time of the year. Well, it's the tree for August, but we're really nearly in August, and it felt right for this community, because the apple tree is all about finding your community of purpose. It's about finding it. So at this point in the process, in the ASA process, the 12 trees, when we come to the apple, it's about finding our community of purpose. And that might be an online community like ASA, or just any other community of purpose. It's not necessarily the people that live near you. We've all come from all over the world, but we're here as a community of purpose, and we're connected online. And a community of purpose supports you in finding, what is my patch of soil? What is my patch of withered, cracked soil that really makes me angry and sad, and I want to water and let those insights and those changes grow in that place? And I think to find that, for me, it was really about connecting to my anger and connecting to my grief, because from the anger, you get your purpose, and from your grief, you get your love, because they're two sides of the same coin. So the apple tree is about finding your community of purpose, finding what your grief and what your anger tell you needs to grow. And it's about finding your allies, finding your mission, breaking it down into small chunks, doing small steps one by one at a time, and slowly, slowly watering that cracked soil. So, and finally, I wanted to go back to the Rumi poem, because actually, that Rumi poem that frustrated me so much, the one that says, this field beyond wrongdoing, right doing, go and lie down in that grass, and I could never quite do it. But then at the end of that poem, there was something else that made me realize that in order to lie down in that grass, you need to find your purpose, you need to find your watering can and the thing that you can contribute before you can lie back in the grass. So at the end of the poem it says, and I think it's so beautiful, "The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the doorsill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep." So now, the apple tree journey, it's 25 minutes long. It's quite long. Please don't feel that you need to stay for all of it. But if you do want to go, then maybe just go slowly if you can so that you don't tread on someone if they're deep in a meditation. Ooh. And it has music and a narrative. You can stay sitting. It's actually quite good to sit because the idea is that you're kind of rooting into the ground. You can also lie down however you feel comfortable. You can open your eyes, you can close your eyes, and at the end we will have time for some questions. And if we don't have very long for questions, we will, as Leonie said, sit over there and answer any questions anyone has. Thank you so much.
A single apple tree stands in the centre of an ancient orchard. There were once many trees here, but the soil became over-extracted. Too much was taken from it, and the trees withered apart from one very resilient tree. It is springtime and the sun is already very hot. The grass is patchy and brown. The earth is parched and cracked. But the apple tree still grows, its apple blossom buds just opening up in the hot sun to be pollinated, just like they always have. But without other apple trees for cross-pollination, no fruit will come. You walk up to the lonely singular tree, touch its smooth, shiny bark, and then you sit down with your back to the base of the tree trunk. And as you breathe in and out, deeply and slowly, your trunk, the trunk of your body, merges with the apple tree's smooth trunk. And you feel a root growing down from your sit bones, down through the ground, down through the rocky earth, the tips of the roots growing around any big rocks, finding their way down to where the earth is cooler and there is water. Breathe in and up from your roots, up through your body, breathing in through the nose, breathing up from this place of hydration and solidity at the root tip, breathing in and up all the way through your trunk, up to the crown of your apple tree. Hold the breath there. And then breathe out through your mouth as you breathe back down through the tree trunk, back down to the root tip, deep in the earth. As you breathe in and up from the root, up through your trunk, up to your crown and back down, hold the awareness of some of the ways that our world's soil has become over-extracted, the ways that economic systems have been prioritized over the flourishing of the interconnected web of all life. And as you continue to breathe up from the roots, up through the increasingly dry ground, focus on just one issue that you care about, just one little patch of earth where you would like to make a difference. And as you breathe up and down your tree, just say the name of this specific issue quietly to yourself. Just a short phrase to describe it. What is the one thing you would change? And then as you breathe up and down from the roots to the crown, imagine a vision of that specific challenge being perfectly transformed. Hold an image of a scene where the pain of that issue has been healed and the system has been restored back to the natural way of things, of belonging and balance. Keep that image for a moment longer, and then come back to focusing your breath on breathing up and down your apple tree, up from the roots to the crown on the in-breath, up through the nose, and down as you breathe out through your mouth, back down to the roots. Keep that image for a moment longer, and then come back to focusing your breath on breathing up and down your apple tree, up from the roots to the crown on the in-breath, up through the nose, and then back down as you breathe out through your mouth, back down to the roots. And feel your roots, your trunk, your branches standing strong but tired in the dry heat. The driest patch of earth can be replenished when humans come together with strong and focused intention for change. Imagine that your solitary tree is visited by 3 humans. See them approaching now. Each one has a watering can in one hand and a flowering apple tree sapling in the other hand. See them getting closer. See their faces, the expressions, and then see them standing around you in a circle. And they water you. Feel the dry patch of earth around you soften. The cracks are filled. The pale, hard land melts into darker, rich soil as the earth remembers itself. Then the 3 people plant the 3 apple trees around you. And they water the trees, and you feel the sense of belonging, togetherness, community, receiving backup after standing alone for so long. Breathe in this feeling of standing in a tribe. Breathe in the sense of reinforcement all the way up your tree and back down again. And then the humans, having watered their saplings, come back to the center of the circle to water you again, and you feel the soil soften even more. And you breathe up this feeling of replenishment and restoration up through your trunk, along your branches. And you feel your blossoms open up a little as the humans turn and walk away with a smile. And you know that they will be back every day to keep this patch of earth watered, keep your flowers blooming. Keep breathing up from the roots, trunk, crown, and then breathing out and down, back down to the roots. Along your branches, blossoms are incubating their potential to become apples. At the base of each apple blossom is a ring of 10 tiny golden cells, tiny golden points of light. If that blossom is cross-pollinated, when the petals fall off, the bud of the flower will swell to become an apple, and that ring of golden cells will become the apple seeds. But for now, the flowers all over your branches hold only the potential for fruit. Breathe in and up from roots up to your heart. Hold your breath there and feel a blossom there at your heart with the tiny golden points of light. Breathe into your heart and feel their potential glowing there. And release the breath. Now breathe in and up from your roots up to your forehead. Hold the breath there. Feel the blossom there with the tiny golden points of light glowing. Feel them brighten and swell, and then breathe out. And now breathe in from the roots up to the crown of your head. Feel the blossom there at the crown. Hold the breath there as the tiny golden points of light tingle and glow. And release the breath. Breathe in and up from your roots, trunk, along your branches, your arms, to the tip of the left little finger. Feel the blossom there. Hold the breath. Feel the ring of tiny golden points of light there glowing with potential, and release the breath. And again, breathe up from the roots, trunk, along the left arm to the left ring fingertip. Hold the breath and feel the tiny golden points of light there glow, and release the breath. Breathe up along the branch to the left middle fingertip. Feel the flower there tingle, and release the breath. And breathe up to the index fingertip. Feel the flower sparkle as you hold the breath there. And release. Breathe up from the roots to the left thumb tip. Feel the cells of potential glowing. Tiny golden points of light. And release the breath. And now the right arm, the right branch. Breathe up from the roots, up through the trunk and along the right branch to the right thumb tip. Feel the tingle at the base of the blossom there. And release. Right index fingertip. And release. Right middle fingertip. And release. Right ring fingertip, tiny golden points of light, glowing. And release. And the right little fingertip. Breathe into the tiny golden points of light in a ring at the base of the blossom there. Hold the breath. And release. Then with the next in-breath, feel all the rings of golden light at the base of each apple blossom all over your tree glowing. At your heart, forehead, crown, fingertips. Hold the breath there as the tiny golden points of light radiate brighter and brighter. And release. Keep breathing up and feeling your blooms open up more with each breath in through your nose. And as you keep breathing like this and feel your blooms opening, become aware of the 3 new apple trees, these new friends, different varieties of apple tree, but all with the same purpose, creating fruit from this dry patch of earth. Each member of your apple tree community has apple blossoms of a different color and shape. And breathe in the strength in a system of diversity and unity at the same time. And breathe out the unique fragrance of your own flowers. Offer it up to the sweet mix of the orchard's collective perfume. And breathing in the strength of unity and diversity. And breathing out your unique fragrance to add to the mix. And now the bees come to cross-pollinate. The bees weave around the trees, bringing the spark of new life to each flower that they visit. Breathe up from the roots to your heart, forehead, crown, and fingertips, and hold the breath there as you feel the vibration of pollination, the bees visiting every flower. And know that the bees combine the pollen of all the flowers in the orchard. They are merging your essence with the collective offering. And then release the breath. Breathe in and up from the roots up to your heart. Feel the blossom there, and as you hold the breath, feel the petals fall off and the base of the flower swell to an apple. Hold the breath as the apple swells, and then breathe out. And then breathe in and up from the roots up to the forehead. Hold the breath there and feel the petals fall off and feel the flower swell to become an apple. Hold the breath as the apple swells. And then release the breath. Then breathing in and up to the crown of the head. Hold the breath there. The petals fall off. Feel it swell into an apple. Hold the breath there as the apple swells, and then release the breath. Then breathing up from the roots, trunk, along your branches to the tips of your fingers, and feel the blossoms on each fingertip swell to fruits. And then release the breath. Then with your next breath in, feel your tree is laden with sweet, heavy apples. Feel them everywhere, heart, forehead, crown, fingertips. Breathe in and up, bringing this life force energy up from the roots as the apples glow and swell. They get sweeter as they ripen. Feel yourself ripe with potential, life expressing itself through you. Growth glows you, life lives you. Now rub your hands together and hold them a few inches apart as if an apple of energy is there between your hands. Rotate your hands around this apple, feel its solid form. You have made an energy apple. Rotate it between your hands. This is your power. And as you hold this life force energy in your hands, this energy apple, you feel the truth of the interconnectedness of all things, the rising of cooperation over competition, the power of diversity and unity. And fill this apple in your hands with the peaceful power of this knowing. Hold it. And then drop the apple to the ground. Let it fall to the floor. Sometimes we have to let go of things for true transformation to occur. Breathe up from your roots, up through your trunk, along your branches, preparing for the surrender of autumn, where you will release all of your fruits. And breathe back down your trunk, back down to the roots. Keep breathing like this as you feel a tinge of cool on the air. The winds of change are coming. Feel the wind gently shaking your boughs. Every autumn, nature surrenders its fruits. The trees allow their branches to let go of their treasures that they so lovingly created. They let themselves be empty, to hunker down for winter until the blossoms return next spring. So now, start to surrender your apples one by one to the earth. With each breath in through the nose, breathing up from the roots, trunk, and along the branches, find another heavy, sweet apple to release on the out-breath. So as you breathe out through the mouth, you release the apple, let it fall to the floor, see it there on the ground, succulent in the autumn sun's golden glow. Keep breathing in and up to find an apple to release somewhere along your boughs, and on the out-breath, release the apple. With each breath in through the nose, breathing up from the roots, trunk, and along the branches, find another heavy, sweet apple to release on the out-breath. So as you breathe out through the mouth, you release the apple. Feel your bowels are empty now. Breathe in through your nose, in up from the roots, trunk up to the crown, and the tips of the bare branches. And then release the breath, breathing out through the mouth, down along the branches, trunk, back down to the roots. Breathing up and down your tree that has offered all of its fruit to the earth. At the heart of every apple you have created and released are your unique seeds. These are completely different to the seeds of your parent trees. A unique contribution in the great diversity of life. Myself, they speak. What I do is me. For that I came. See the apples from all the trees on the ground. They cover the orchard floor, different colours. The apples of the orchard are composting together on the ground. The seeds that are held in the composting apples are seeds of unimaginable creativity. They hold the legacy of radical change makers. These are the seeds of the apples that grew in the driest conditions, that triumphed. These seeds crack open, and tiny little sprouts burst out and germinate. Watch all these sprouts turning into little seedlings and plants and grow into tiny trees. And what was once a dry patch of land has sprung into glossy green vibrancy. This is the power we incubate in our communities of shared purpose, shared vision. Our essences combining. New seeds composting in the core of old ways. New life breaking out of the passing of the past, as we surrender our old beliefs and open new ground for the as yet unseeable but palpable promise of the golden seeds of change. Then come back to your apple tree, roots, trunk, branches. Feel the tingle of the beginning of the next round of tiny, shining golden cells that will form the base of the new blossoms next spring. And then new apples next summer. Feel the promise of the new cycle already forming within you, encoded deep within you. These rings of tiny golden points of light already forming at your heart, your forehead, your crown, your fingertips. Feel the tingle of these tiny shining points of light, the brightness of potential, They will hold their tiny points of light through winter until the sun comes back. Big deep breath in from roots to crown and back down. And with this radiance within you, the potential, your unique pattern of becoming, you separate from the tree and walk back home. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you, everybody, for sitting and being with us on the apple tree journey. We've got some time for questions now, but I forgot to say before that the music for that apple tree journey was made by an amazing musician called Finn Petcher. So I just wanted to say his name because Finn Petcher. But anyway, we now have, how long do we have for questions? We have 10 minutes for questions, so.
And I just wanted to mention and give special thanks to our sign language interpreters that are always teaching us that there are other ways of communicating and experiencing information and stimuli in the world. And that each one of you here is also contributing to the community here. So everyone at any point who's brave enough to cry in public or brave enough to bottle it in public and live out this quite charged experience. Thanks to all of you as well. So, question time.
Thank you for this most wonderful talk and the meditation session. I'm wondering, so listening about your experiences developing this help with psychedelics, it's very academic, it's very quantitative, and where we are, it's exactly the opposite of that. It's very experimental and so on. And I was wondering whether there are any bridges that you think of or that could be made between this casual lifestyle and the very academic approach to treatment with psychedelics. Like, if they're, like, in your opinion, what are the touching points, so to say?
Thank you. I mean, yes. So I think in a way that's what ASA that Leonie and I are working on is actually meant to be, because it's a community for people that have come from clinical trials, like Leonie and others who have tried psychedelics as a treatment, but also for people who have experienced psychedelics at Boom or in their bedroom or anywhere. And it's actually also just for anyone who is integrating anything, which is basically everyone right now. So it's a very open community, and that's exactly what we want it to be, that idea of cross-pollination, that in the sharing circles as part of this ASA community, there's sharing circles every month, sharing circles about the tree journeys and sharing circles just about how people are and a place to share those insights. So we want those groups to be diverse. The ideal thing would be that if in each kind of sharing circle of 8 you had, a few people who did this, came from this kind of world, few from the clinical world, few from musicians, artists. We want a really diverse group of people to really start thinking together about it's about creativity. What are we all learning from this? Underneath it all, when you get right down, it doesn't really matter what context you're experiencing this in some ways. I mean, obviously the context really frames the experience, but the depth of the messages we're getting are all deep down. They're kind of the same, I think.
Right, so this one will be, oh, this is so weird. Hi. So a very quick question. If, how to sign up to the community? Because this is, I live in the UK, and I was kind of, if you really want to, you can organize something to work with. But then I wouldn't know what to do because I felt like this integration element afterwards, when you have to process everything that you've seen, felt, and everything. I'm not entirely sure talking therapies would be able to cover it. And I don't think there's too many ways to get your GP to actually sort support. Is there anything that you would suggest we could do? Is there, like, how can we sorry, I'm not English, so it's just the. How can we apply or get in contact or just, where can we find you?
Thank you. Yeah, it's true. There are not very many kind of places, and that's what this is for. There are some psychedelic integration groups online as well that are kind of drop in. You kind of pay £20 each time. There are some of that from the Psychedelic Society and various other things. But for this particular process, the ASA process, which is the 12 trees. I've left some, I didn't have enough, but kind of pictures of the 12 trees around. So if you see any of those white pieces of paper like that, it's actually got a QR code on the back which takes you to the website, or you can just go to the website. We're taking applications because it's going to be limited the first time round. I think like next week, I think the 1st of August, we're going to start taking applications, and you can sign up on either, it's going to be asaintegration.com, I'm pretty sure, or just through my website. You can also get a link. It's drrosalindwatts.com. So one of those two, you can apply, and then, Thank you.
Otherwise, you can Google the Acer integration and Roz Watts, and then it will definitely come up.
All right. Can I add to that? Roz mentioned the other integration groups. I think what's interesting for me about the ASA program is a lot of people that go to online or even in-person integration groups often go there when they've had a really challenging experience. And so a lot of the integration there is sort of crisis management in a way. What's great about sort of ASA, because it's a longer-term process, and often it's quite an intentional therapeutic process in terms of people, it's not therapeutic, but what people do is they go there and they're willing to do the work. It's not crisis management. It's a long, slow, steady process. So I think that differentiates it from being any other kind of integration group. And I'd also encourage people, if they're doing their psychedelics through a retreats organisation, to really look at what kind of integration offering they have as part of the package. I think any amazing retreats organisation, I support an organisation called Alalaho, who offer psychedelic retreats, and they've built in an integration program as part of their retreat, which is focused on that experience, but then can open wider and longer term with something like the ASA integration.
And the vibe here in the back is amazing, actually, with the sun kind of semi-blinding us, and it just looks like this kind of vision towards some psychedelic future. So the vibe in the back, A-OK. And here's a question.
Hi, thank you so much. This was really interesting. I wanted to ask about the future of psychedelics and integrating them into society, and what you sort of imagine happening as decriminalization might become more and more possible. Do you feel like it's going to continue being a lot of separate kind of entities, self-made organizations or retreats like you talk about, or do you have any ideas of kind of a system-wide therapy where integration is at the center and what that might look like?
Do you want to start, Roz?
It's quite difficult. I mean, I don't know. I wish I could. I wish I did, because I worry about it, and I wish I could kind of have a crystal ball and see that it's all going to be fine. But I think it's hard, because I think overall what we're seeing is some very powerful, large corporate companies synthesizing psychedelics, patenting them, patenting lots of aspects of them, and essentially, it's kind of going to go. It'll become quite medicalized. I think a lot of the more spiritual aspects, ceremonial aspects, will be kind of cut off, and it will become quite. What's the word I'm thinking of? Kind of sanitized. But that will just be one part of it. That will be one aspect. And when the decriminalisation part happens, which I cannot wait for, that will really change things, because that will empower. I mean, I think some of the psychedelic companies don't want decriminalisation. They actively, what's the word? I can't think of any words today. I wonder why, after a few days of Broom. When you kind of canvas for something like lobby, thank you. Some of the psychedelic corporate companies that are making these synthesized compounds, they actually lobby against decriminalisation because they want it to just be them that can sell psychedelics in their own way. But decriminalisation, I'm pretty sure, is going to happen, and that's going to be when we really see people power coming up, and we will be able to choose the ways psychedelics should be taken, the context. There will be huge diversity, I hope, but it's just going to be probably that awkward lag between when the corporate starter phase and then when decriminalisation happens. And I think after that lag, it's going to get pretty good. So maybe bumpy at first, but then pretty good, I would say.
Yeah.
Anything to add, Leonie?
I would just say that, as we all know, people have been taking psychedelics for millennia. This is not a new thing, and I think people will continue taking psychedelics. And I think alongside the decriminalisation and what happens, I think what I'm hoping will happen is a lot of communities, people coming together and being able to support each other, and with decriminalisation, not having concerns about doing so. And I really think it'll be a real pivotal turning point in bringing people together and we're walking this path together. It's that Ram Dass quote of, we're all just walking each other home. And I see a lot of walking each other home going forward.
All right, folks. One final, warm send-off to Leonie and Roz, and they'll have some time to speak to, like a little whispering circle maybe over there in the corner for some additional questions. Thank you both very much.